All right, so we're going to start moving into our second panel of the day. This one, it couldn't be more head-on with really our subject of the day with Gary Vee. So we've got Paul Green joining us over from the UK. We appreciate you being here, Paul, and it's really focused on building your MSP's brand and your personal brand. Paul Green is a MSP marketing expert. Again, based in the UK, he's been working with over 600 plus MSPs around the world. He helps MSPs improve their marketing and generate more leads with his MSP Marketing Edge program. He's got a fantastic podcast called Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast. I am an active listener of that. And Paul Green is also a former journalist and radio presenter. And he's been in the space since 2016. And once you hear him speak, you will certainly understand how he came from radio. So he's got one of the best voices in the channel. So Kevin, I think you're going to bring on the panel, and Paul will introduce them.
I'm going to bring on our panel here. And yes, and for those listening, if you're podcast junkie like I am, it's absolutely one to listen to. So take it away, Paul.
Thank you, Kevin. And do you know, Matt, that was a wonderful intro. Thank you. And funny hearing people talk about your voice. Of course, some of the best guests that we've ever had on that podcast. It's Kevin and Matt. In fact, I think you were in something like our 7th most listened to episode. So thank you very much for your contribution. So we're going to be talking about sales and marketing in this panel, but we're going to narrow down onto a very specific subject. And in a second, I'll ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. Now, when you talk about sales and marketing, all MSPs want more. In fact, we've just listened to an entire panel about growth. All MSPs want more. They want their business to get bigger, but most MSPs will freely admit that their marketing sucks, that they're not very good at marketing. They didn't get into this to do marketing. It's just one of those things that they have to do along the way, and it's somewhat of a distress activity. We could fill this entire All-Stars event talking just about sales and marketing, but instead we're going to narrow it down to just one tiny, narrow little thing, which is so critical. And that narrow thing is branding. And what we're going to explore over the next 25, 30 minutes or so is what actually branding is, because it's not just your logo. We'll explore what it is. We'll look at your company's branding versus your personal branding. And on our panel today, we have literally some of the world's best experts at branding, people who are there in the trenches day in, day out, not just talking about it, but actually building brands for vendors in the channel, for MSPs, and there's some incredible personal branding happening in here as well. So we will introduce, or I'll ask our panel to introduce themselves. Julie, would you like to give us a quick 10-second intro for you?
Absolutely. I'm going to try and do it in less than 10 seconds if possible. But hi, everybody out there. My name is Julie Marvelli. Like Paul said, I am the Director of Channel Operations for Ring, a VoIP-based company in Miami, Florida. But we are coming to you live from California, Paul's favorite state in the U.S. But I take care of event logistics, presentations, and I manage the entire sales team and get to hang out with MSPs every single day, whether it's virtual or in person. So I'm excited to be here.
That's great, thank you. And anyone that doesn't live in the US, I think California is their favorite state. It's just the best place to go. It's just my opinion anyway. Well, yeah, New York's cold though, as California's hot. So, Rick, introduce yourself, please.
What's shaking, Paul? Hi, Julie. Hi, Jimmy. I'm on today because I'm talking about obviously marketing and a lot about the personal branding side. I'm the owner of the first and only ever public MSP, managed service provider, Reach Out Technology. We just took it public a couple months ago, and I'm also in the channel just to help MSPs make more money. You know, because we're growing through acquisition. Of course, that's the public roll-up that we're doing. However, I still want to affect 5,000 MSPs over the next 2 years, and I want to see them fulfill all their dreams, because who are you becoming when you're not fulfilling your dreams?
Absolutely. That's a great intro. Thank you very much, Rick. Congratulations on going public. And you do have amazing personal branding. I've been stalking you across the internet, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Jimmy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Jimmy Hatzell. I'm the Director of Marketing at QuickPass Cybersecurity. I'm actually here at IT Nation Secure right now. So I am currently in Orlando, but I am in what I would argue is the best state. I don't know. You're saying California, but I do live in New York City, so I think that is. the place that a lot of people like the most. I don't know. But anyway, I am someone who comes from a very technical background and stumbled into marketing by accident, and I made a career out of it. I've built other brands in the channel and a personal brand for myself, and I lead all things marketing here at QuickPass.
Jimmy,
Okay,
it's like
that's
you and I are in
excellent.
the
Thank
same
you.
boat here, right? I'm in a club at an American Airlines, a VIP room in their lounge doing this, just in between speaking events today, too. So we're making it work, right, guys?
I'm at an
I
event
love
too,
this.
so
I love this.
helps full circle.
And no, I'm very boring. I'm at home in the UK, and yeah, no big events for me. But at least I don't have to stress so much about my internet connection. So let's stick with you, Jimmy, and we're going to start right at the beginning, because obviously the vast majority of people who are watching this are MSPs, where marketing is a thing that has to be done. It's not necessarily a passion, which you could argue it is for the four of us. Jimmy, what is branding? When we talk about branding, we know it's not really just a logo, but can you define what branding actually is?
Sure. Branding.
Now, have I just jinxed it by talking about internet
I was just thinking
connectivity?
that,
Is that
Paul.
just
Yeah.
Okay? I'm glad it's not just me.
Is
Would you? Yeah, I jinxed
lost
that.
him.
Oh, what's first rule of doing a speaking gig like this is never mention internet connectivity. So we'll come back to Jimmy in a second. Julie, perhaps I can throw that question over to you. And can you tell us what branding actually is?
Sure. So when you think about branding, it's what's front and center. There are many different aspects of what people consider your brand to be, because you hold a lot of them. You hold a personal brand, which you bring into the world every day. You have a business brand, the brand that you wear as your company logo. But like you said, Paul, it goes so much deeper than that. The brand is how you present yourself internally at your organization and externally to your customers, your community, your peers, even your competitors.
And in terms of how branding fits into marketing, Julie, can you explain what those two things are? Because I think for non-marketing professionals, it would all just be seen as one thing, in the same way that advertising, and websites and tactics like Facebook and social media are all thrown in. What's the difference between branding and general marketing?
Great question. So sort of like the common thought that sales and marketing do work together. However, they, at the end of the day, act as two completely different entities of an organization. And that absolutely falls into the category of branding as well. Like you said, Paul, branding is just a small sector of your marketing. But the thing about your brand is you have to look at it from two different perspectives. Your brand has to be absolutely consistent. The fun part about marketing is you get to be creative in that sense, whether you're trying to promote a new event, a new product, a service, a new team member, if that matters to you marketing wise. But your brand needs to stay absolutely consistent, because that's what everybody sees, whether it's a glance, whether it's somebody that's getting a demo, it's every aspect. And that absolutely applies to the MSP community, because when you guys are sending out proposals, when you're sending out quotes, invoices, every single time your logo should be on there, your brand. That's a part of who you are. Does the marketing need to have that in place? Absolutely. But the marketing can be changed. The colors can be changed. Every little detail can be changed. If you're not consistent in your brand, you're going to miss the mark.
Okay. And Rick, when we talk about a brand, and I agree with Julie about the consistency being incredibly important, the reason for that is not really to do with trying to influence people's brains, is it?
No, the consistency part is interesting, and I think consistency falls under two sides, right? Because I'm a bit of a different breed. If you were stalking me, you know that, because there's a lot of things that I throw out there that are very polarizing. So if there's one thing I'm consistent at, it's consistent with my voice. It's consistent in the amount and the duration and the rhythm of content that I put out there. But as far as the content itself, that's ever changing. Because there's current events. I'll go on Bloomberg this week and talk about Elon Musk, but they're inviting me on Bloomberg because of my personal brand and because of the consistency that I always continue to do very large media outlets. They want to see that consistency before they'll trust you. It's the same thing with the customer as an MSP. They want to see the consistency of you. How are you going to communicate to them? Is it the same thing that you're telling them every single time? But no joke, and this is why personal brand is so important versus your company brand. Your personal brand is up here, like the top of the umbrella. Underneath that is your business brand. They're going to go check you out first as a person. They're going to Google your name and see if you're consistent and keep saying the same things. You can switch it up and jolt them. One day I'll talk about, chasing tornadoes. Another day I'll talk about, socialism. The next day I'll talk about MSPs. So switch up the message, but it always stay relevant and true to who I am in my voice. That's the consistency.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Jimmy, let's test to see if we've got a better internet connection. I know you've moved over to a hotspot now. Can you hear us, Orlando?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me okay?
That's great. Yeah, we can hear you just fine as well, which is great. So, Jimmy, let's pick up that thought about consistency. So, both Julie and Rick have mentioned it. I agree. It's a critical thing to get right. Now, you're a in the trenches marketer. You're doing marketing every day, and yeah, okay, you're doing it for a vendor, but you've been on the MSP side, so you've done it from that side. Why is it so difficult to get that consistency day in, week in, month in?
Sure. Yeah, I think, this goes with both branding and culture. So like when I think in the same way I think of culture, it's not what you say you do, it's what you actually do. And it's what happens. You can really test your culture when something goes wrong and the actions that you take. And branding is very similar to that in that branding is how people perceive you in the market. It's how what people think of when they see your name, when they see you represented. So with your brand, it's not just the colors of your website. It's not just the logo that you create. It's all of the things that you do, all of the actions that you take. So when you create a certain brand for yourself, whether that be as someone in IT or someone a thought leader or someone who helps their community, or if you're MSP, you position your brand as someone who is someone that you can go to for support or, a pillar in the community or whatever. You have to not only say that you're that and promote that message, but you actually have to do those things. And a lot of branding and building your brand is about consistently taking actions that reflect the values of your brand.
So what makes that really hard? And there was a key phrase you said in that, Jimmy, which is it's how people perceive you. What makes this really hard is we're talking about something here that isn't as tangible as do A, B, and C. Although, Rick, I'm going to come and ask you in a second how you've achieved your personal branding. But it's not as tangible as, hey, just do this, just do this, just do this, and people will perceive you a certain way. Because, of course, perception is very subjective. We all have different views of people based on our previous experiences and other information that's come into our brains and how we feel. Julie, how do you get around that? As a busy business owner who's got many other things to do, how do you create that and shape that perception in other people's minds and hearts?
So I have the opportunity. I wear a lot of different brands depending on where I am, right? So I relate to that personally. It's a matter of it's really compartmentalizing. It's a very bad struggle with that word, but that's really what it comes down to. It's your core focus. I think one of the things that MSPs, we see it every day at conferences, having focus on that, whatever is going on presently right in front of them. Yes, is it a priority? Absolutely. But what's the bigger priority? Their customers and the fires that they need to put out. It happens every single day. I mean, that MSPs are here to make their customers' businesses better. It's not just the technology, it's for giving their customers a leverage to help their businesses or customers grow, succeed, etc. So it's really a matter of focusing on it and not letting the ball drop on that. Marketing can easily be seen as something that's not a priority. And I think Jimmy hit a lot of good points on why it's so important to do the things that you say you're going to do, especially in the marketing world, because that's going to reflect your brand. So, and this goes right back to consistency too. You need to have a constant focus. And this really talks to being centralized as well. It's very easy to be sort of all over the place and want to try out different things. Is a trial and error something that you should do? Absolutely. Every single one of us A/B test. All of us are in sales and marketing in one way or the other. How are we going to know things succeed? That's great. But if you're not focused on that actual aspect of your brand, you are not going to have any sort of consistency, and it's going to show in your marketing, your sales, your service delivery, and it's just going to it's going to roll downhill.
Yes, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, Rick, I mean, you dropped in earlier that you were going to be on Bloomsburg, or you had been on Bloomsburg, which was pretty good credibility drop. You clearly have lots of marketing out there. You have lots of content out there, and as you said earlier, you have a very clear voice, so you can talk about lots of different subjects, but with one voice. Let me ask a practical question of how do you achieve that? So we're hearing the same words from all the answers. We're hearing consistency, and we're hearing, making sure that you do what you say you're going to do. You're a busy guy. You're doing a roll up. You're appearing on all these media channels. Do you personally take on the burden of making sure that all of your external branding is in your voice, or do you have assistants, someone to do that for you?
Yeah, those are very good questions. Now, it's been through an evolution. I've hired branding agencies. I've been through several branding agencies, and now I have everything that's in-house. I have people in-house that manage social media. I have people in-house that manage trainings that I do on LinkedIn. I have people in-house that manage my podcast, because it's pushed out to over 50 countries now. But this is something, I'm in my 4th year of doing this. And if I think back to when I just started, and I just had a conversation, I mean, we're at an event with Gary Vee, right? I had a conversation with VaynerMedia just a couple of weeks ago. And when we were talking, Gary is actually still involved in about 85% of his social activity. Videos are brought to him, and it still maintains consistency because he's the one that's choosing those videos to go on his social platform, and he posts 5 times a day. I learned that mistake the hard way, because at the beginning it was just like people were capturing my content for me when I hired branding agencies, and then they would put things out. I'm like, well, that's not me. They would write copy that wasn't necessarily in my voice, and it's hard to write in the voice of somebody else. So now I have people that are internal, and this doesn't have to be like a team, right? I have a whole team. But even right now, I've got a camera going right to the side of me in a lounge at an airport to capture exactly what I'm talking about right now. So this becomes just consistency in delivering your voice, and now it's right from me. They can transcribe this and then bring it to me, the people that create my videos within my own team, and say, is this one okay? Is this one okay? I'm like, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. This one isn't quite me. Well, you wrote here, and here's why. So it's a consistent process, but it's a repetitive and rhythm that I've gotten myself into, and that takes time. It doesn't take like 2 months to build 300,000 followers on Instagram, or build a LinkedIn following of MSPs that are 11,000 MSPs strong on LinkedIn. It takes time to do that. But the thing that you can go out and do tomorrow is be you, and only be you. Don't let a branding agency or anybody else tell you, well, you should do this or well, you should do that, if it's not in your voice, if it's not you. They'll try to put you into a box. And the only way to actually make an impact in this world is to live outside of those norms, those borders. So be you, because there's only one you.
So that's what I take away from that is you're saying delegate the work, but don't delegate the responsibility.
Bingo, exactly. It's what Gary Vee does. He's got D-Rock. If you look it up, D-Rock's on Instagram. He has his own personal brand. That's his content creator. He's with them all the time. I've got people that are with me all the time that travel to events and everything, but I didn't start there. It used to be just holding the phone, and capturing my own content. But then I delegated my voice to somebody else, and that was a mistake that I made early on. Now I approve and say, this is my voice, this is not my voice. Use not this, but that.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Jimmy, let's talk about confidence, because I think Rick makes a very good point there, to just be you, to be yourself. And I think for any business owner or any business leader to just be themselves in their marketing just cuts through. It's a 10x moment of cutting through, because no one else can be you. In fact, the worst thing you could try and do is be someone else, whereas just being you is the most natural thing you can do. But we're talking here about people who own businesses who have come into the business owning route through being technicians. And, many, not all, but many of the technicians that I've met are not necessarily extroverts. They tend to be perhaps a little more introverted. The idea of being on a camera and, having a camera film them while they're doing an interview on a live broadcast with 430 odd people listening is many MSP owners' idea of hell. So, Jimmy, what can the average MSP owner do to boost their confidence, to allow them to be themselves in any of the branding efforts they're doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is starting with your why. So for myself, I am in cybersecurity because I want to help people. I believe that I can make a true impact in the world and protect real people and real businesses through MSPs in cybersecurity. And then I'm a pretty nerdy person, and I just like IT and cyber and MSPs in general. So that is what I care about, and that is why I do the things that I do. It's why I have the job that I have. It's why I spend time away from my family. It's why I get on this video session and then go and do this presentation at IT Nation Secure 10 minutes later. And that drives my brand, and every single thing that I do, every piece of content that I post. So like you're getting me sitting outside looking for the best Wi-Fi, tethering on my phone, speaking from my heart, because this is the real me. And I like, people will make the mistake when they're talking about branding. They're like, I want to, everything needs to be blue, or we need to be buttoned up, or we need to be blah, 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 blah. MSP owners have the coolest stories ever. Like every single one of you is a business owner. Every one of you started usually with one person doing a little consulting work and built it into this true business that helps hundreds, if not thousands of people every day. You protect them, you keep them secure. That is your why, presumably. And if it's not, there's something else that's worth talking about. Build your brand around that and be yourself. When I'm saying be yourself, I'm not saying, always do videos in your house with your family and, put your favorite soccer team on it or whatever. It's not anything like that. It's be the person that you want to emulate, and start with your why before talking about the what you are and the how you're doing things.
You don't necessarily want to show yourself on a bender on a Friday night, right, Jimmy? That's really who you are.
Wait, I'll give you very quickly a funny story on that. When Facebook Live first came out years and years ago, I was perhaps one of the first people in my group of friends to do a Facebook Live on a bender on a Friday night. And what I didn't realize was that for the next 5 years, everyone that connected with me on Facebook, that was the first thing they saw, because it was my most popular piece of content. You do have to be careful with stuff like that. It has been deleted by now if you join me on Facebook. Julie, let's start to make this practical and real, because we've talked about lots of concepts and ideas, and I know MSPs love it when you actually drill it down into how you do stuff. And Rick, I'm going to come back and ask you in a second about how you got started, because you're obviously a long way down your journey, and I want to take you right back to the beginning and what you did. Julie, if you were talking to an MSP tomorrow, I know you do loads of trade shows. I think you said you do around about 40 shows a year, which is a lot of traveling. It's a lot of meeting with MSPs. If an MSP was to come up to you tomorrow and say, "Hey, saw you on that great channel program event, loved what you were saying about branding. Where do I get started? What's the first thing I should do?" What would you recommend to them?
Okay, so I think that's going to depend on a couple different factors. I guess I would start by asking where do they want to start? Are you wanting to start your brand, like your personal brand, or is it your organization's brand? Is it your professional's brand? Which one is it? Because if it's your personal brand, that's easy. That's just a matter, going back to what Rick said earlier, that's what people go to first. That's the priority at the end of the day. It's your personal brand. You can wear a number of different logos on your chest, but your brand, who you are, needs to come first. So it's about developing that absolutely first and making that the priority, utilizing social media to do that. I think we are on a panel with LinkedIn experts from that perspective, and that is the platform where you start. Absolutely. A lot of MSPs love to use LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Those are your top two platforms to really get started. I find Facebook to be your test platform. Find out what's working and what's not working, what is truly working, what you want to put out to the world, to your customers, to your prospects, to your competitors. You throw that up on LinkedIn for sure. I love LinkedIn. I love the lightness that has been added to it. I think COVID really did that for us. That's maybe the one good thing that happened through COVID. But LinkedIn has created such an open ecosystem for MSPs to start with their brand. And that's how I've gotten to know a lot of MSPs before even meeting them at shows. I've seen their face everywhere. And I look at them in person and say, I remember you. I'm half the time I'm going to say, I remember your brand. I remember your company. I remember you. I'm going to remember your face. And it's about developing that personality profile and what you want to portray, but going to what Jimmy said, doing that and doing it for your why and being genuine doing so.
Sure. And Julie, could you argue that for most MSP owners, because people buy from people and they are the front person of the business, that actually their personal brand is the business brand, and the vast majority of people they meet will not remember what the company name is, they will not remember what the website is or what the logo looks like, but they will remember that person's face and they'll remember how that person makes them feel?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, when I get up on stage, when Rick or Jimmy get up on stage as well, that's what they're taking away from our presentations. It's not the cool PowerPoint that our team put together and, busted their ass on. I mean, that's absolutely important. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I take that personally. I love creating content, but they're looking at your face first. They're listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth. And that's exactly what they're going to remember. Is the brand on the back burner? Not necessarily. It's sort of the secondary brand in this type of mindset. They're going to remember exactly what you said. They're going to remember what your personality was like and everything in that aspect, because people naturally connect to people.
Yeah, they do. So Rick, imagine you were going back 4 or 5 years when you were really getting started with building your own personal brand, but imagine you were back then with the knowledge that you have now. What would you do differently? So what would you do to get started?
I would have brought a consultant in, somebody who had done it before. And this was the interesting thing I found out about branding agencies too. External thing that the done for yous is that they like to tell you what to do, as I was saying before, rather than consult you and help you make your own decisions. So I would say bring in a consultant that's also doing right now what they teach. I mean, when I do, I've got coaching launching next month with MSPs, at livemspcoaching.com. But one of my things is like, hey, I'm not an MSP that sold my company 10 years ago, and now all of a sudden I'm a coach, I'm out of touch with the market or anything. I'm actually teaching you what I really do, what I've done and what I'm still doing. If you look at branding agencies, like there's VaynerMedia with Gary Vee, he's actually doing what his company does. So I would hire VaynerMedia long before I would hire some of the others that I've worked with, because you'd go
Stacy smiling.
I think you lost him, Paul.
I think. Oh no. Okay, I thought that was me. I thought that was my connection.
Did I get there?
Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
You're back,
Okay,
Rick.
cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we lost you. You would hire VaynerMedia.
Yeah, I would hire VaynerMedia, especially because Gary actually does what his company is doing right now, versus someone else like I've hired several branding agencies that don't even build up their own social profiles. They don't even have their own social proof, and maybe that was my own stupidity, but I didn't know. I'm like, hey, you're working with these other clients. That's cool. And they show you your portfolio, but then you look and they're not actually doing it. Dude, it's just like an MSP, right? Selling all that, because I am, still have an MSP, large MSP, took it from just me, like Jimmy was saying. It's that story. That's why 60 Minutes is doing an expose, because I was just single man. And now I've got a public company, but I'm still doing these things. It's like an MSP going out trying to sell a security stack, a cybersecurity stack. Let's say there's like 10 tools in it, and they're not even doing those same 10 tools in their own shop. That's the same thing that I see with branding agencies. They have to be doing exactly what they're telling you to do. You need help from the beginning. 100% you need help, because you just don't know. You need that support, but make sure they're doing exactly what you want them to do themselves.
Yes, make sure they're drinking their own Kool-Aid. Now, Jimmy, what we're talking about here, of course, is not a quick win. You can't start to do this stuff and then you're suddenly get an influx of clients. You have to make a commitment to this, and it takes time to do it. I mean, are we talking here about a never-ending commitment that you have to be constantly working on your branding forever, or is there an end in sight?
I would say because your brand is what you do, it eventually becomes natural, becomes a part of you. MSPs that I've worked with typically will lean away from working on marketing or anything that has to do with brand, because it's not an inherent skill, right? Jumping into the technical stuff, jumping into fixing a server or fire, they'll spend so much time on their business there instead of on the marketing things, on the sales side, or even on like margins and operational excellence. I'll just say this. If you want to have a good brand and you want to have good marketing, you have to work on it. You can't just invest in somebody else to do it. I'll give 2 books, and if you're serious about this, you can at least read one of these 2 books. The first is Founder Brand by Dave Gearhart. It was just released a couple months ago, and it is literally a guide on how to get started doing this. So any MSP can do it, and it is step-by-step instructions on how to get started. The second one is called Story Brand, or Creating Your Story Brand, and it's the Story Brand Framework, and it is a classic marketing book, and it is a framework for how to tell stories and how to, it literally gives you boxes, and you can put in the story of your brand and you creating your MSP. And you can use one or both of those things, and I guarantee you they will both give you a clear path and clarity on how to move forward and create your own brand and a brand for your company.
Yeah, those are great book suggestions. Thank you very much, Jimmy. We're going to start to wrap up in a second. So just to give you the panelists a warning, I'm going to ask you for, if you like, an amazing idea. If you like your best idea, perhaps something that we haven't already mentioned, but something that an MSP owner can use to build their personal brands and obviously start to attract more attention from prospects. I must just mention, you mentioned about stories there, Jimmy. There's a reason why stories are so powerful to be used in your marketing. In fact, I would argue that stories are at the heart of all good marketing, and it's down to the way that we are programmed. Even though we're very modern people living here in 2022 on these video conferences from hotels, inside our heads, we've got 200,000-year-old programming. And that programming is based around a time when our culture had no written form of communication. So the way that information was passed from generation to generation was through stories. And, as kids, if you think back to when you were kids, or if you've got young kids yourself, kids love stories. They lap up information in stories. The very best teachers when they're very young, teach them stuff wrapped up in stories, because that's how our brain actually learns best. And although that changes a little bit when we're an adult, we still respond better to stories than we do to dry facts, which is why we go and watch Top Gun Maverick, which is an excellent film. And we don't just sit there with a list of facts of things that happened in the film, because that's not fun for us. It's much more fun to actually go and watch Tom Cruise and all the other stars flying around in multi-million-pound jets. So, Julie, we're going to come to you for your final thoughts. What's the most impactful thing, or perhaps something we haven't spoken about, that would really make a big difference in an MSP's branding?
Absolutely. So one of the greatest aspects of where to start with your personal brand outside of social media and where to really start building that, and I think this gets forgotten a lot about with MSPs, because especially now with everyone being remote, not having as big of a sense of community as we once did. I think we will get back to that in short order. Use your community. Utilizing your community, getting involved, is a fantastic way to evolve your brand, start your brand in a centralized place, right? Utilize your chamber of commerce. Utilize the local organizations that surround you. My mentor was a 15-year MSP, and he always talk about why it's so important to make sure you're utilizing the community, you show who you are and out there in the world, that you're not just a business doing your thing and going home, that you actually care about the community. I mean, that's what MSPs are at the end of the day. They do care about their community because they're servicing their clients in a regional aspect. Are there MSPs who go national? Absolutely. I mean, we're looking at one right now. It happens. But utilizing your internal community to build brands, build relationships, because relationships absolutely need to be a part of your branding. If you don't have relationships, what's the point of having your brand? You got to bring it to somebody or something, right? So utilizing your community, utilizing the people around you is a great place to have that evolve for yourself.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Julie. Jimmy, what's your final thought?
I talk to so many MSPs, and I get very similar answers almost every time when I ask, what is your main source of referrals? They say word of mouth and referrals from customers. That is your brand. So then I ask them where they're spending their time on marketing, and they say, oh, we're doing this pay-per-click ad campaign. We just spent this money with this SEO company, this blah, 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 blah. If you're getting 90% of your business from referrals, why not spend some time trying to amplify that and work on your brand a little more? Spend more time in your community and more time talking to your customers and echoing what you want.
That's just strikingly obvious, isn't it? That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Rick, before I ask for your final thoughts, what's the ticker for your public company?
We are public. We are not listed. So it's an intermediary step. We have free trading shares through an investment portal right now where you buy the shares, which is reachoutit.com/invest. And you'll see myself on there with a video with the original shark from Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington, because he's an investor and on my board of directors. It's pretty awesome. He's become a friend and a mentor over the last couple of years. We'll list in a couple of years, which will be a huge liquidity event for everybody too. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I bet. That's so exciting. Thank you. So what's your final thought for today?
Get the fuck out of your own damn way. Okay, when you're looking to start this, you absolutely need to just do it. You commit first and then you take massive action. And I was on another podcast within the channel the other day, and they're like, hey, how vulnerable should you get? And this ties off of Jimmy, right? It's like, show your life. I'm walking in here. I had like some smudge on my shirt or whatever. I was going to put that on my story. Go look at my story on Instagram right now. It's just me. It's raw. It's who I am. That's what people care about, because with the referrals and the word of mouth, you can put your social links not to your company, but to you. Your own personal brand, you yourself, who you are. And when they share that out, because I walk into clients I haven't seen in 3 years, literally in 3 years, like last week, law firm, right? And he's like, I watch all of your videos. I haven't talked to this guy in 3 years because I've got a team that works with him. I was just saying hi to clients. Hey, we went public, all this. Like, I watch your videos. I love them. I always share them out, because it's a connection point to you, and people buy from people. They'll share those with people that they know, like other lawyers, other medical professionals, and say, hey, this is the guy, this is the girl that's handling my cybersecurity. This is the one that's fixing all my shit at the office. That's where you start, is get out of your own damn way. Just start putting it out there. Definitely not perfect. When you wait for perfect, it's going to be too long, and your MSP will be closed by that point. Jump on it now.
I love it. I love it. Get out of your own ways, the edited version of that. So thank you. Thank you very much, Rick. Jimmy and Julie, you've been an absolutely epic panel that has just absolutely flown by. And I'm going to hand back to the king himself, Mr. Solomon.
I appreciate it. And real quick, Jimmy, can you name those books again? Because we got a lot of people who asked the names of those books.
Sure. The first is called Founder Brand. It has a yellow cover. It's by Dave Gearhart. And the second one is called Building a Story Brand. I think that's what it's called, but story brand is what a lot of people call it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. And
All right.
Paul, thank you so much for doing this. It's a fantastic
Pleasure.
job. All right. Thank you.
There we go. All right, we got. Let's see. I said I was going to do my job well. Getting there.
I did it for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, look, a couple really good nuggets in that one as well, right? I mean, aside from there's obviously conflict and difference of opinion on the best state, depending on whether you're from the States or not. And a lot of the themes, right, was just really investing in personal branding. That's key. It doesn't matter what other logo you wear on your shirt. It's invest in your personal brand. Matt, you've done that exceptionally well, obviously. And then it's also look for those, if you're looking for a consultant or somebody to help you with your business, certainly look for social proof. I think that's a just absolute key nugget there. And it's all about relationships. And that's one of the most important things about this industry in general, right? It is all about relationships. So whether you're a vendor, in building relationships with MSPs building relationships with their customers, it is a relationship first business. So I think they nailed it. That was fantastic.